Ladies and gents, welcome to CG Reaction, and this is the American Revolution Oversimplified Part 1 by the channel Oversimplified. I already reacted to 3 of the Oversimplified video, the latest on Prohibition and about the slavery, American Civil War. Now I'm reacting to American Revolution. One by one I'm going to react to every single Oversimplified videos. But yeah, American Revolution. So basically America, was claimed independence from Britain. I think at the first it wasn't about independence, it was more about protesting the taxes that Britain was levying on USA. At the time it wasn't USA obviously, but so basically it was tea tax, sugar tax, things like that. Then slowly they're like, we're claiming independence. Then it became about the independence. I know some key figures from this, like George Washington, Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was at the time a great scientist. He was at the time, comparing to other, was really great scientists. In the entire world, not just in the USA. But people don't know about that more. They know more about him being a founding father of America than being a proper scientist. So yeah, American Revolution is going to be fun. Oversimplified is always awesome the way he creates it. And remember people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe so I know which type of video to react to more and which channel to react to more. And if you haven't seen my other reaction, check out the description. There's a link with all of my videos there. Check out the cards, check out the end cards to see what YouTube throws at you, I guess. And that's what's this video.
So you know how we're looking for a new trade route to India, right? Right. And the Earth is round, right? Right. So I'm thinking we can just sail the other way around the planet, right? Yeah. So I set sail, right? And I reach India, right? Right. Wrong. Wrong. I did not reach India. I did not. All right. No. All right. Get to the point. Did you know there's a whole nother freaking continent out there? Okay. And do you think I should care about this? Why? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I forget to mention there's gold everywhere? Gold?
There you go.
Columbus landed in Central America in October 1492, and he had the time of his life. And by that I mean he went on a huge theft and murder spree. He stole gold, jewelry, people, and a hammock. And then he returned to show off all of his riches, including a few previously undiscovered items such as tobacco, the pineapple, turkeys, and a hammock. Now I know what you're thinking, but oversimplified, Columbus didn't discover America, the Vikings did. And
yeah, first, I know this is about just funny and jokes things, but at the start that he says, Columbus went back and tell them, I didn't discover India, I discovered America. But at the start, he didn't know, he was confused. That's why he called Native Americans, Native Indians. He called them Indians because he thought he arrived in India. He started to call everybody Indians, but then realized later that this is not India. So I'm pretty sure when he first discovered it and then went back, he didn't know that it was India or not. Or maybe he did, I'm just guessing here. But I'm pretty sure he didn't know at the start.
you'd be partially right. In the 11th century, Leif Erikson was the first European to land in America. But hey, if you love Vikings so much, then why don't you check out today's sponsor? Vikings War of Clans is a mobile game that was inspired by the famous strategy and RPG games of the 90s like Age of Empires and Civilization. Do you like building cities, collecting resources, training armies, joining a clan and going to war? Then my friends have 200 gold coins and a protective shield. Don't forget to look me up and join my Vikings clan under my nickname OverSimplified. Now where was I? Oh yeah, Columbus, time of his life, hammock. And suddenly the race was on to explore and conquer the New World. After a couple centuries of warring with the natives and each other, the European powers had claimed quite a lot of land, including this area, which both the English and the French claimed as theirs. One day the French said, "I'm gonna build some forts along here." And the English were like, "Could you not?" And the French said, "Sorry, but no, I could not." And they went ahead and built their forts, which pissed off the English, so they sent an up-and-coming British lieutenant colonel by the name of George Washington with a combined force of British troops and Native Americans. After a short battle, the French commander said, all right, we surrender." "Okay, boys, pack it up. They're surrendering." Oh, sorry, was I not meant to split his head open with the tomahawk? Don't worry. It's not like this will start a 7-year-long major global conflict. And what happened next was a 7-year-long major global conflict, which Great Britain won. At the peace negotiations.
That's what started 7 years war? Damn, I didn't know that. It started in USA apparently.
Spain gave up Florida, while France gave up all of its territories in North America. But Britain's victory came at a cost, a £60 million cost. They were now broke, in a lot of debt, and had to come up with some way to repay it. So they went to the colonies and said, okay, listen up. So a huge part of the war was spent protecting you from the French, and now we have no money because of it. So I'm not sure what you're saying here. Okay, so we spent a lot of money protecting you from the French, right? Right. And now we're broke. That certainly is a pickle. Listen to me.
I don't see
We
the
spent
connection
all of our
here.
money protecting you, and now we need money. Can you please pay us back some money? No. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and tax you. In 1764, Britain introduced the Sugar Act, forcing the colonists to import sugar and molasses exclusively from the British and to pay duties on them. Then a year later, they introduced the extremely controversial Stamp Act, and it worked a little something like this.
Sugar Act, I don't know, I think there was about, what, 10% tax on sugar? I mean, when you think about it, today, and anything that has an export and import, anything you export and import today has a massive duty on it. Averagely goods have 10 to 15% taxes anyway in every country. So that's what Britain was doing at the time. And at the time, it seems so much that Americans like this is unacceptable. And yet today, every country has that level of duty on every goods. And from this is just about, foods and things like that. Other goods like electronics and things, that's just ridiculous. Especially in India. Here, lots of things has ridiculous level of imports, like 150%, 200%. I mean, recently the PlayStation and Xbox was launched. It's ridiculously high price here compared to the other places. I mean, first I'm like, when I was a kid, I'm like, India's not as rich as other countries. And those countries have to pay much less for the item, and we have to pay much more. Isn't this kind of stupid? And poor people cannot pay, so how are they supposed to buy these products? How is this a good marketing term? Well, later I found out, wait a minute, it's not the people who are selling who sets the price. Obviously it's the local government. So basically this is the kind of thing that British was doing at the time, and Americans like, yeah, this is way too much, you cannot do this. And yet that's how the system works today.
Hello, shopkeep. Hello, Mr. Bungleberry. Here's the deed for your new shack. Stamp. That'll be 3 pence, please. Wait, what was that? It's the new tax. I get a stamp on any paper or documentation I make, and you have to pay for it. Would you like to see this pamphlet that explains everything? Yes, please. Okay. Stamp. 2 pence, please. This is awful. You know what? Just give me a deck of cards so I can go gamble my pain away. Okay. No.
No.
Don't do it. Stamp. Obviously, the colonists were like, hey, my dudes, this new tax legislation right here, this is BS. Until now,
that is exactly what they use. I'm not so sure, but isn't in the Middle East, I think the stamped thing is still going on. I heard about it somewhere, like this is the still case in the Middle East. So they are still doing this stamp thing. Now, this stamp thing is just stupid. That's just, blatant text, like give us money kind of thing there.
they had enjoyed relative freedom to rule themselves, and now suddenly Britain was asserting its control. They were especially unhappy because they didn't have any representatives in the parliament that was levying taxes on them. So they protested. Orators gave fiery speeches. British goods were boycotted, and anyone loyal to the British found themselves increasingly harassed. The whole thing actually began to take quite a toll on British business, and after just a couple years, the British were forced to repeal the Stamp Act. But we still desperately need money. What should we do? We could try taxing the colonies. Great idea. Wait, didn't we literally just try that and it failed miserably? Man, look at me. I look fabulous. Have you ever seen such a handsome boy? No siree, Georgie. No way. You're the handsomest, smartest, most popular king that ever lived, and everybody likes you. You're doing such a good...
I mean, British could have done a better job there. They could have given more representation to the Americans, They could have smoothened things over and then give some kind of tax or find some kind of equilibrium there. To also get the money that they need and also keep Americas as their colony, but I think they handled it really bad.
Good job. Your Majesty? Oh, you're still here. Get the hell out. So in 1766, the British made a declaration saying, we can do what we want because we're in charge and you can all go suck it. Then they levied a whole bunch of new taxes on the Americans via import duties. Glass? There's a tax for that. Lead? There's a tax for that. Paper? Tea? Oil? There's a tax for that. And once again, the Americans boycotted British goods. British business fell...
Yeah, but like I said, duty tax are still applying today on everything that has an import or export. They get taxed even today in every country. So today I'm sitting here watching this like, what's wrong with that? I mean, if I knew that there was a massive tax on things like that, that would make sense. But I think I'm not sure 100% sure, but I think sugar only had 10% or so tax. I think tea part was a bit too ridiculous. It was about 35 or 40% tax. on the T, if I'm remembering correctly. That's just ridiculous.
Felt the pinch, and the British had to back down. Alright, this is ridiculous. They're my colonies, and I have to be able to assert my control. Repeal all the new taxes except for the one on T. Also send 1,000 troops to Boston to take control. Oh, and make the colonists pay for them. And as British troops arrived, the tension in Boston was palpable. You could cut it with a knife, and it was all about to come to a head. On March 5th, a band of local patriots began heckling a British guard at the customs house. More and more Americans joined in the heckling, while more British troops turned up in support of their comrade. Snowballs were thrown at the British. The snowballs turned to rocks, the rocks to oyster shells. The soldiers, outnumbered, panicked. One thing leads to another, and you can see where this is going. 5 civilians were killed. The Patriot press throughout the colonies declared the Boston Massacre an unwarranted crime committed against the people of Boston by the cruel British, and the anger continued to grow. A British revenue schooner that ran aground in Rhode Island was burned by the locals. When it came to light that the governor of Massachusetts supported the suppression of the colonists, his house was burned by the locals. And next, the colonists would set their sights on the remaining tax on tea. On December 16th, 1773, a band of patriots known as the Sons of Liberty disguised themselves as Native Americans, marched down to Boston Harbor, boarded a British merchant ship loaded with tea, and in front of thousands of spectators, threw nearly 10,000 pounds worth of tea overboard. The British were disgusted, and they punished Massachusetts with a vengeance. They dissolved its General Assembly, revoked their charter, and sent 3,000
Not the tea, my precious tea.
more troops to occupy the city, meaning Boston and Massachusetts were now essentially under the direct rule of Great Britain. And oh boy, were the people pissed. The other colonies saw what was happening and worried they might be next, so they called a brain trust to decide what to do. 56 delegates from 12 colonies gathered and met in Philadelphia at the First Continental Congress, and the roll call read like a who's who of America's finest thinkers. I'm talking lawyers extraordinaire Johnny A and Johnny J, experienced military commander George Washington, businessman and future alcoholic beverage Samuel Adams, fiery orator Patty H., guy who married a rich lady, Big J. Dickinson. And while they weren't present at the first Congress, soon names like James Madison, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and much later Alexander Hamilton would all serve time in the Continental Congress. The question now, though, was what to do about the British. After much bitter debate and disagreement, they eventually agreed on an amazing solution. They would simply ask the British to stop. Can you stop? No. It didn't work. Okay, then tell the local militias to start arming and be ready at a minute's notice. And across the colonies, these Minutemen stood ready for the beginning of the American...
I'm pretty sure it wasn't as simple as that. They are like, you know what, let's go through, chain of events. Let's just first start with saying, can you stop? Just to preserve goodwill in front of people, not just in this country but entire world. Like we went like this. First we humbly asked that, can you stop doing all this? They said no. So then we mobilized and created a revolt. So they all decided like we are gonna go there and ask them to stop. Clearly they're not going to. So at the meantime we're also going to mobilize and to do our revolt and form Minutemen and things like that.
Revolutionary War. Now, having your colonies in open rebellion is one thing. Once they start arming themselves, that's when it really hits the fan. So British General Thomas Gage ordered 700 troops from Boston out into the rebel-controlled Massachusetts.
Yeah, especially whenever there's an empire and their colonies start to mobilize in any sense, they're like, oh hell no, they just runs toward it. Like, no, we have to suppress this. This is a massive threat.
Its countryside to destroy stores of arms and ammunition held by the rebels in Concord. The British set out in the middle of the night. Patriots including Paul Revere rode ahead to warn that the British were coming, giving the rebels time to prepare. The two sides met in Lexington as the sun began to rise. They faced off against each other, and in the confusion, somebody shot first. The shot heard around the world marked the beginning of the American War of Independence. The rebels were outnumbered and had to fall back to Concord as the British split up to search for rebel supplies. However, more and more Patriot rebels kept showing up, and this time it was the...
I'm not so sure, but at this point still, aren't they just fighting because of the tax? I don't think anybody has said that they are fighting for independence. That was, that was said later. I could be wrong about them, I'm pretty sure.
British who were outnumbered as more fighting kicked off in Concord. The most professional army in the world was forced to flee back to Boston at the hands of local, poorly trained militiamen. And all along the British route back to Boston, Patriot rebels continued to gather and open fire on the retreating British. When the British reached Boston, the rebel militias surrounded them. Boston and the British were now under siege as small land and naval skirmishes continued around the city. And the British would suffer another embarrassing blow. this time in upstate New York. Colonel Benedict Arnold concocted a plan to take the British stronghold Fort Ticonderoga, which held a large amount of guns and ammunition. He set off towards the fort alone, hoping to recruit men along the way, when he came across the Green Mountain Boys, led by Ethan Allen, who, as it turned out, had the exact same plan he did. So they decided to work together. But I'm in charge. No, 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 I'm in charge. This went on for some time, until the Green Mountain Boys threatened to go home, and Arnold had to concede. The group raided the fort at night, while the Redcoats were
Who are Green Mountain Boys? Is that another faction that the people created against the British or something?
asleep, and they caught them completely by surprise, taking the fort and all of its munitions with almost no resistance. Wow, great job, Ethan. Very
With his army, he's just standing there at the door like, come on man, come out, come out.
impressive. By the way, what happened to that other guy we sent to take the fort? Who? Benedict Arnold. Never heard of him.
Oh my god, he is.
Ouch. What the fuck? Nobody knew what was going on. The colonies were in open rebellion, and for now, they even seemed to be winning. So King George fired General Gage, replaced him with General William Howe, and ordered the rebellion to be put down immediately. Okay, the British are definitely going to retaliate for all of this, so we should probably put together a proper army. First, we need to pick a commander-in-chief, and I think we can all agree that that job should go to the man, the myth, the legend, George Washington. My friends, I am humbled and honored that you would consider me for such an important role. I did not expect for this. All right, you've been showing up in a military uniform every day for the last 10 months. We all know you wanted this, so cut the crap, George. Dude. Uncool. So Washington began his journey up to Boston to take command of the
I hope that's just a joke and he wasn't actually arriving there with military costume for 10 months.
the newly established Continental Army, just as the British made their first major attempt to break the siege. They made plans to take the high ground on Bunker Hill, but spies warned the Continentals of the British plans, so they fortified Bunker Hill and set up defensive positions on nearby Breed's Hill. The day of the battle came, and as the British advanced, a barrage of Continental gunfire was opened up on them. Twice they tried to climb the hill, twice they were pushed back. The battle lasted 3 hours until the Continentals finally ran out of ammunition and had to retreat, allowing the British to take the hill. While technically a British victory, they suffered nearly 1,000 casualties to the Continentals' 400. The colonists showed the British that this wasn't just a rebellion, it was war, and they were ready for it. But one thing they weren't sure about was why they were fighting. While some radicals were starting to throw around the I word, most hoped to eventually repair their relationship with Great Britain. So they sent a letter to King George saying, "Hey man, looks like things..."
Exactly, like I said, at the time they were just fighting because of tax and all the import duties. Nobody was clearly said that this is about independence yet.
"Aren't going your way. Remove the taxes and let's be friends. I'm gonna kick your ass." Send that to the colonies. Your Majesty, your handwriting is terrible. Are you sure? Just do it. What does it say? He's gonna lick my...
Oh.
Gross. So for the remainder of the year, small engagements continued to occur around the colonies. The British burned down the towns of Falmouth, Massachusetts and Norfolk, Virginia as revenge for earlier anti-British incidents. These actions played right into the hands of patriot propaganda. Overseas, the British were seen as brutes, and the French and Spanish would soon begin sending supplies to the rebel cause. During this time, there was also minor fighting going on between patriot and loyalist militias in the southern colonies. Benedict Arnold was still on a mission to win some personal glory for himself, so he headed up an attempt to invade Canada in a two-pronged attack. The Continentals managed to capture some British forts and the city of Montreal, but a harsh snowstorm with some smallpox on the side saw them defeated and pushed back at Quebec City, and they were forced to retreat all the way to Fort Ticonderoga. Speaking of which, remember all those guns and ammunition? Well, this guy's got a plan for what to do with them. He uses oxen to drag 120,000 pounds of artillery for 2 months through the harsh winter, 300 miles all the way to Washington and his Continental Army surrounding Boston. Boom. Washington's got himself
300 miles in snow with ox. Ah, I don't have that level of patience. I cannot do that.
some big guns, which is fortunate because up until now his army had been suffering through the cold winter, not knowing when the siege would end. Now they could make a move. Washington wanted to launch a full assault on the city, but his junior officers felt the British were too fortified, and to his credit, Washington was great at hearing and taking on board the ideas of others. Instead, the Continentals worked through the night setting the guns up on Dorchester Heights, overlooking the city, and when dawn broke and the British saw the guns, they knew they were toast. Their positions were completely exposed. It was checkmate. They had no choice but to abandon the city. 120 ships carried 9,000 redcoats and
Oh, that was smart. Who said that to George Washington, like, we should do this? That guy is smart. He just like, you know what? Let's just give them visual threat. That's enough.
2,000 loyalists away to an unknown fate, and Washington had his first victory of the war. Washington then moved his army to New York, knowing that when the British returned, they would probably land there. In the meantime, a friendly-looking old man by the name of Thomas Paine had written and published a pamphlet called Common Sense, in which he advocated for total independence from Great Britain. It spread across the colonies like wildfire, and to this day remains the best-selling title in America. It was read aloud in taverns and meeting halls, and brought the idea of independence into the mainstream. Congress began to seriously consider the idea. Thomas Jefferson was selected to write up an official declaration.
America's best-selling of all time is about independence. So that's so American, isn't it? America's best-selling thing is just about independence.
Of Independence, and he went hard, writing that all men are created equal, with certain inalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Of course, Jefferson had over 100 slaves, but we don't have to talk about that. On the 2nd of July, Congress voted unanimously in favor of independence, and John Adams declared that the 2nd of July would go down as the most remembered day in American history. Then a couple days later, independence actually came into effect. The United States of America was born. There was no turning back now. The Americans tore down a statue of King George in New York and melted him down into 42,000 musket balls. To the British, it was treason, and if the king had his way, Washington and all of Congress would be hung. Speaking of the British,
well, technically, it is as treason as it can get, I guess. They were British colony. They're like, we're independent. Screw you, Britain. So in Britain's eye, it is kind of treason.
Guess who's back? The king sent an intimidating force of 130 warships and 25,000 men to New York. Washington knew that taking on the most powerful military in the world wouldn't be easy. The British set up camp on Staten Island
Most
as
powerful
the Americans
navy.
dug into defensive positions around Brooklyn Heights, waiting for an attack to come. But the British just waited, wearing down their opponent's nerve while building their own strength. At one point, they launched a big scary artillery barrage and then said, if I was you right now, I'd probably sue for peace.
I mean, yeah, at that time, British Army, British Navy, they had lots of veterans there, and they know all the psychological warfare. So it is pretty. Right now, we're like, yeah, America, because we all know USA how powerful it is now. But at the time, they were a British colony. There wasn't proper USN that we know of right now. And just thinking that Britain, who basically dominated most of the world. These colonists are trying to claim independence from them, and they sent a massive navy after them. I mean, anybody would think like that's it. Those colonists are gonna get their ass kicked, but it's ridiculous to think that they actually defeated the British, man.
Peace. But Washington told them to shove it. The Americans kept holding out for what was coming, and when they finally hit, they hit hard. 15,000 British troops approached the American position, and the two sides fired on each other in massive rows. But what the Americans didn't realize was they were only fighting a decoy. The main British force was going around to flank the Americans from behind, and when
Well, also about that, I remember playing Assassin's Creed 3. In that, there was a mission about this, fighting where rows of people arrive and they, bring up the musket, shoot, and, whoever dies, another row comes, and that just repeats for a long time. That's just effed up, man. It's just, first of all, they are, basically had some, inaccuracies in them. And if you shoot, that's it. You don't have time to reload, so another wave comes. So it's really weird, and people just dies left and right, and they had to just stand there like a wall is coming. They can't even take cover. So people died a lot randomly in that scenario.
they arrived, they inflicted heavy casualties. The Americans panicked and retreated back to Brooklyn Heights, where they then found themselves trapped between the British Army and the river. It looked as though the war was already lost, but luckily, instead of attacking, the British decided to dig in for a siege, and then a thick fog set in, allowing Washington's army to escape across the river unimpeded. The British continued to chase and engage the Americans at Manhattan, and the Americans suffered defeat after defeat after defeat. It was a disaster. Washington's leadership was called into question, as thousands of American POWs were left to rot as traitors. Washington's army fled through New Jersey all the way down to Pennsylvania. Rarely had an army been so badly beaten, yet survived to fight another day.
Damn, that was just part one. I forgot that this is in two parts. American Revolution. Actually, it's astonishing how Americans won this one, because anybody, if you tell them that Americans won, they're like, yeah, what are you saying? Obviously Americans won, because they have the mentality of today, like how powerful USA is today. I mean, today USA is ridiculously powerful, but at the time USA wasn't USA, they're just British colony, and they are going against British, and at the time British were just too badass. I mean, they dominated most of the world. The navy was untouchable for centuries by now. They have massive veterans, like, you know, the people who know psychological warfare all around, and these were just colonists. Among them, some of them like George Washington and people like that were, you know, military veterans, sure, but not at the level the British had. And Americans still won. I mean, yeah, you could say that, you know, it was on the American soil, so basically they had advantage, but that's not how simple it is, man. It is astonishing that they won, because, you know, some events here and there would have changed just by a bit. History would have been completely different today. So this was awesome. Alright people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification so you know when I'm going to upload the next part of this or any other video. And check out my other reaction that I did. There's a link in the description with all of my videos. Check out the end card, check out the cards, and I'll see you next time.